We're both back.
We're back.
I know people listening at home might be like, you didn't go anywhere. You've been posting at your regular cadence, but we have been scooting around the world actually separately.
Yeah. You were gone for a long time.
Yeah, it ended up being 25 days in Colombia, largely in the
Cool.
mountains of Colombia, and it was great.
Cool. Should buy a house there.
Probably. My mom brings that up all the time. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be nice. It's actually a pretty effortless segue into what we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
should we start
today.
this podcast
I mean,
today?
the podcast is about
Yeah.
rest, relaxation, creating space so that we can find out who we really are and all that. And like, what a better time to do
Yeah.
that than having both of us just come back from.
Yeah. Yeah, this might end up being a two-parter or a one-parter. Who knows? We'll just have to let it see how it flows.
I love the idea of it being a two-parter,
Okay, great.
especially when we can bring
Buckle
in
up,
both
everyone.
energies.
Yeah.
Because I think the way that you were telling me about, and you had this idea for it, I love the idea.
Yeah.
And you were like, I want to do one part of an episode where we talk about kind of the importance and the power in creating space and rest for yourself, and a little bit more of like maybe some
Relaxation.
anti-capitalist tendencies
Yeah.
perhaps we might get into.
Yeah, like the case for doing nothing.
The case for doing nothing, the
Mhm.
power in
Mhm.
doing nothing. And then also our next episode, I imagine, is going to end up being something more about like
opposite.
the power in harnessing your power, the
Yeah.
power in pushing yourself,
Yes.
the in which parts of our lives is it kind of baked into our script
Yeah.
that the more that we put into it, the more we're going to get out.
Yes, exactly.
Right. But it isn't
So,
just one thing.
and that you have to be able to hold both in your mind as a human being and in your heart, that you have to be able to like both relax into your life and also create, like put in the energy that you would like to see out of something. And you have to be able to sit and you have to be able to move your body and you have to, right? You have this like dualism that I
Yeah.
think is kind of, and then we can hold it all lightly, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, is like we don't have to be too attached to either side, which doesn't make for great TikTok content because that's not just easy to digest. Like you gotta just get up and grind.
I mean, that's truly like David Goggins. I was
Right.
watching some of the stuff getting ready for this, and it was almost like funny for me to watch it because he was like, "Yeah, motherfucker." He's like, "You gotta push yourself, and you gotta make the world that you want to have." He's like, "Nothing looks better than when you are the man, and everyone knows it, and everything you make and everything you touch, But what it takes is you gotta put that effort in, and you gotta have that drive." And I'm sitting there being like, "Man, this is." First off, probably not great advice for anyone, and then it's might be okay advice for some people that need a little bit of boost in their tush, and it's horrible advice for people that are already
Overextending hustle culture. I mean, we live in a orange Enneagram 3. For anybody who's listened to those earlier episodes, like America is an Enneagram 3, like push yourself to the extreme, maximization of time for profit, culture. And so
achiever culture.
So are all most Western cultures.
Yeah.
But we already exist in this culture, and then you have those types of messages on top of it. And so what it kind of does is give permission to that idea of like every moment should be squeezed for efficiency.
Thich Nhat Hanh has, I told you about his little book called How to Relax. And he's like, the adage of our culture is, don't just sit there, do something. And he says we need to flip it and go, don't just do something, sit there. He says that relaxation is an art and it's a practice, and we need to take it really seriously. He's like, you should take this seriously and make it into a practice because, actually, let's kick it off with my first little quote from that book called How to Relax by Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, it's, when we have unscheduled time, we tend to get bored, seek entertainment, or cast about for something to do. A lazy day is a chance to train ourselves not to be afraid of doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we don't think about this and this topic, then we kind of can easily end up in a place where we're like, I can't just do nothing. Like I really struggle and I'm Brad Stewart, I'm saying this,
Oh, so do I, for sure.
where unless I carve out time where it's like, oh, it's vacation time or
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'm gone,
Right.
then a hammock or a nap or an aimless walk for no purpose,
Or
I
just sitting,
struggle.
literally
Or
sitting your butt on the couch.
actually, how big of a test is this that we have a cultural problem that we can't sit? I don't mean sit waiting for a movie to start or waiting for an
But even
appointment with
that
the
we can't
doctors.
do.
Of
We
course,
can't sit and wait for our friends to walk into a restaurant. We
absolutely,
can't sit on a plane. We can't sit at the movies. Right. We can't sit even in the moments where we're waiting for something else to happen,
totally,
much less actually just sit.
totally. And you're completely right about all that. And then I'm saying, like, for the listener at home, the litmus test is, can you just sit? And that's it. I can kind of do it. Like
I
I
can do it
want
in
it to
bursts.
be, yeah, I want it
This
to be
morning,
part of my
I
practice.
tried to just sit and just breathe and not do anything else, not listen to a podcast, not listen to a meditation app, just sit and breathe. And I made it, I don't know, 2 minutes. And then I was like, oh, that plant needs water. I should get up and water that plant.
Yeah, right. Then the should start coming
Right.
in, or yeah, I mean, truly. So, so what inspired you a little bit to fire me a text on like what was happening in your heart that you
Well, I
said I want
think
to
it's a
talk?
little bit of those two things, those dualities working together, where I'm feeling very motivated right now in a work capacity.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really motivated with movement of my body. And I'm really just like, and I've kind of toned down the way that I was moving my body. And in some ways, like much more like low impact walking,
Mm.
swimming, low impact Pilates.
Okay.
And then on the other side, I've also turned up, like, not that this is not a fitness podcast, but like,
Right. Right.
but like turned up like my VO2 max efforts and like
Yeah.
max weightlifting at the gym.
Okay.
So I've been going through this duality too of like, how do I sit and be okay with a lazy day and also plot out what I want to do with this agency, this marketing agency that I'm building?
Yeah.
And how do you do those two things? And how do you let yourself relax and sit and be okay with the quiet and the empty space and also move your body? And how do you, and so like I think like I've been kind of not struggling with it, but it's just been like, oh, this is interesting because you can't be both.
Yeah.
It's like Jack Cornfield says, you have to be able to like both meditate but also remember your social security number.
Right.
And so I think that that's kind of why I shot those texts over to you, because I was like, this is just so prevalent in what I'm thinking and dealing with in my life right now.
Right.
I also just got back from 2.5 weeks away. You are back from 2.5 weeks away. And like, I think vacation sometimes does make you think about these things because you're like, okay, I don't have to be doing anything except I have to be relaxing. And there's almost like a pressure around like, what does relaxing mean? What does sitting mean? What does doing nothing mean? What does, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I found it hard in a big way to do something that resembles a staycation because I'm still here and I'm still swimming in these, especially New York City waters. And it's just
Hopefully not
like,
literally.
what's that?
I said not literally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I spend most of my time in the East River. But like but even think about it, like let me ask you this, when you came back from your trip, when you were in Italy and Norway, and then you came back to New York, did you feel this sense of like, I'm back in this like zooming?
No.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No.
Okay.
In fact, I like have almost felt the opposite. I felt very quiet and I have been struggling a bit with what's everybody doing? What's going on tonight?
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you this story, but my trip was very relaxing. Oftentimes when I travel, I can be off the beaten path. This is my 5th time in Colombia, and I have no reason to like really push to go see anything in particular. But I found myself in like Macoa, which is on the Amazon rainforest, like edge, and then over towards Pasto and some of the mountains over there. But a little less touristed, and it was very slow, very relaxing. And the general flow of things when I'm doing this kind of travel is like, okay, you show up at the bus station and you're about to hop on a bus for 6 hours somewhere. When's the next one? You don't know. They'll wrangle you in. Yeah, maybe you leave. Maybe they're gonna wait for another person. You end up sitting there for like an hour. Like it's just kind of like you get there when you get there. You're on Columbia time, and maybe you show up and the person running the homestay is like, "Oh yeah," they text you, "Yeah, I'm not home right now. I'm I'm like eating or whatever." You're just like, "Oh, okay. Like, yeah, cool. We'll chill. We'll chill in the backyard." Like you just you kind of submit a little bit to it. And I was so deeply into that. And then when I came back into New York, I checked a bag, and I volunteered to check a bag. And when I landed and was waiting for it to come through the turnstile thing, the luggage return, it ended up being like 25 minutes. And instantly my New York Brad came out, which was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I could be at home. I got to get home by this time because I'd love to get a gym in before the gym closes and then get some dinner and all. And like, I was all of a sudden just like really being a stickler about my time and da da da. And I sat there and was like, Brad, had this happened in Popayan, Colombia, you would have been like, it's fine. I'll just like we'll chat with someone on a bench and we'll sit here for a while. Like so much more of an ease and effortlessness of flow. But me in New York is just like, well,
Yeah, I know. And how do you it's like almost like a constant battle with yourself or for me it is and to continue to remind myself of that when I do get frustrated because the person in front of me is walking slowly at the grocery store or the
hmm
somebody's standing in my way when I'm trying to get off the train car or
mm.
whatever, right? Somebody is slowing me down. I'm offended by the slowdown. And then I'm going to get myself pissed off because for 10 seconds or 2 minutes, I'm slowed down by like something that I can't control. It's really like a loss of control and a desire to own your like to have more control over the
Yeah,
moment.
right.
And when you sometimes when you're away, you can submit. And so then it's like, is that practice for when you're back home? Like, how do we not just do that when we're on vacation? Like, why does time seem like it's more meaningful here than versus when you're away?
Right. More valuable,
More
more
valuable,
useful,
or like you
more
have to be more like, oh, I can't fucking be late. I have to,
in control of your time
yeah,
here.
more in
Right.
control of it.
Right.
Versus when you're traveling, you're a bit more willing to submit. So is that again, is that practice for what we should, how we should be living in our everyday lives?
Was that a question at the
Yeah,
end?
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I feel when I'm able to go to big time in that way, where you're not so precious and controlling over it, that's when I'm more able to find flow, when I'm more able to be in the moment, when I'm so much more resilient of uh, of of anything. Like
Changes, things that are out of your control.
changes out of your control. I made a joke with Lissa yesterday where I was like, if someone's ever going to give me a cancer diagnosis, do it while I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be like, oh, I'm so much more able to zoom out and figure out, like, what does this actually mean? I know it's kind of a grotesque joke to make, but I'm so much more big picture thinking. And yet when I'm here, if it's the train is delayed by 49 seconds,
Mhm.
I'm like, well, and you can see me start grinding my
Like,
teeth. And I'm sitting here. Why is it a tale of two Brads? A little bit like, why are we so quick to jump to that?
yeah, I don't know.
You know, let me ask you a question. This is something new, and we don't need to know the answer right now, but we started off this podcast being like, we're seekers, and both of us have been open to seeing, like, we like change. We want to find change, right? To sin is to stop changing. If you had talked to me a year ago, I was someone that was very much like not on board with the concept of anti-capitalism. I was just like, yeah, that's for people that are like really pushing a left agenda. I'm regular left. It's like I want more equality and stuff, but like to wipe out the whole system, I don't know. That's a whole lot for me. And I'm entertaining some new things in some new ways, especially after reading the book that you gave to me and we covered, All About Love by Bell Hooks. And I've never heard anyone talk about lovelessness being rampant in our society, being so intertwined with the waters that we're swimming in, of everything that we're doing in this world that we live in is just cloaked in the robes of capitalism, right?
Right, but is it causation or correlation?
Great question.
Right.
Right. And these are things that I don't have totally worked
Right.
out. But I think that a lot of um, my usage of time and stuff is kind of surrounded around that of like, well, I've got to earn a living and I've got to.
Right. But even the phrase earn a living is hilarious. Earn a living. Living is not to be earned. Living is given. I'm given my living
Right. Sure.
and I don't have to earn it. I just am.
Sure.
And so like, yeah.
And
I
there's
mean,
a
I love the idea of abolishing capitalism. Isn't it like, oh no, that's democracy. Winston Churchill's quote about democracy is the worst form of government except all
except
the
for all
others.
the
And
other
I kind
ones.
of feel the same way about capitalism. It's the worst form of like, you know, I guess like it is wrapped into government and systems, right?
It's
Except all
yeah.
the others because um, we've tried, you know, we've tried socialism, we've tried Marxism, we've tried other systems. And one of the challenges is that they've become corrupt because the people at the top that are making the rules become corrupted. And so it's like Frodo with the ring, like anybody that touches the ring like becomes corrupted by the ring. And so is it a correlation or causation? Is our society loveless and therefore no matter what system we're existing within, we will find a way to not love each other?
Mm,
Or are we not loving each other because the system is, capitalistic? And I'm not like a theorist about this stuff. So I don't know, but
right.
like I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Right, right, right. And a lot of people would say that there's a lot of important differences between democratic socialism and the socialism that we've tried in the past, which is like a top-down, actually blue spiral dynamic, role oriented society with people at the top that are corruptible. And democratic socialism is more of like actually the people voting are going to retain most of the power. And so the argument can be made. I know there's a lot of people at like PragerU that are like, look at what happened in Cuba and Russia. Is that what you want? And people that are voting for Bernie Sanders are like, no, we want to actually try to fix a lot of those things. And I don't have the answer here. Again, I know
Right.
we're like in the meat of the conversation with still
Right.
question marks, but like
We are not political scientists or,
yeah,
economic
right,
theorists. But like, how do we exist in this world that we exist in?
right,
We're
right.
not, and maybe the answer is it needs to be burned to the ground. I don't know.
Sure,
The good thing is it doesn't matter what we think.
sure.
Um, but how do we exist within this system without letting it bog us down
Totally.
in
And
the way where if we're not in control of our time, it means like time equals money equals
right, right.
ability to support ourselves,
And
support our
freedom.
families, freedom, etc. So like you can see that like like America's a shitty place to live if you're a poor person.
Mm,
And so you can see why, like moving backwards from that point, like why people want more money and more things and more, because it's power, it's control over your destiny, it's freedom, it's and without it, you do lack freedom and options.
right.
So we're in this like complicated system.
And I think that subconsciously happens every time. If you were to say, why are we having trouble with our spare time to like sit and relax? I think that a lot of it is colored by this kind of internal tension that's happening at all times about, well, time is money and money is time, and time and money is necessary for freedom and
Yeah.
options and all of this.
And that's why we get so because that's ingrained within everything that we do. That's why when our friend gets up to go to the bathroom at a restaurant, we immediately grab for our phones.
Sure.
That's why we don't know how to relax on vacation and we can't stop doom scrolling or whatever it is, because we feel like we need to fill up every moment. And like, what if there's something else I should be doing?
Yeah.
It's like, it goes back to that thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago, like this moment isn't enough.
Mm,
And like,
mm.
and because like, and so I need to control the moment with outer stimuli because
Right.
this moment isn't enough.
Right.
Waiting for the bus isn't enough. Waiting for the bag, it's not enough. I need to get frustrated. I need to be
Right.
on my phone. I need to tweet at the airline. I need, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm going to take back control because I don't like this lack of
Right.
control.
Yeah. I can't, I totally agree with that. And I think that almost all of the different, like, sources of wisdom that I've gravitated towards, they're all screaming calmly, but they are like trying to send home this message of the answers in the moment. And if you can be here in the moment, that's where the juice really is, right? But time is money, and our connection with all of that is I'll be happy when I'm not comfortable with the way that things are right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you at the airport waiting for your bag. It's like, well, I'll be happy when I get home and I
Yeah.
can go to the gym and I can take a shower and I can cook something for
Right,
myself. I'll
right,
be
right,
happy when, instead of, yeah, like it's a real practice to be like,
right. So the trick is that I mean, no trick, but the game is that it's all here. We've got to be comfortable with sitting here, which is that Thich Nhat Hanh quote. And
right.
there's man, there's a bunch of these in here, but ooh, yeah. I mean, this really even goes back to, here we go. This is Jesus talking, and he has the parable of the seed that falls in different places. But one of them falls among the thorns, and he explains it. He said, "The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful." I might have just turned a little bit off course there,
Yeah.
but
So
I think,
basically, kind of what that, what he's saying is you might have it in you. You might hear it. You might hear it 1,000 times. You might hear it 1,000,000 times,
right,
but you're living in the world that you're living in, and so it's being choked out.
yeah, right.
What's that Terrence McKenna thing you were telling me about right before we started
The
recording?
culture is not your friend. Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful one. I need to make sure that's my one coming out, my Enneagram one, the one that it kind of shoulds on the world and says the way the world should be. But yeah, Terrence McKenna has a beautiful thing. He says culture and ideology are not your friend, and he's just talking about, like, you really need to be very careful about where you're putting your attention, and that most of the things that are coming in that culture is generating for you are meant to kind of keep you in a lulled state that's easy to manipulate, and you've got to break free of that. Like,
Mhm.
culture is not your friend, and so he's a big proponent of psychedelics and stuff in that way, as am I.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of the nature there.
So, like, going back to that quote you just read me, like like the seed has heard the word, but is buried within a garden of thorns and can't grow because of.
Because you're going to be so worried about your worldly concerns here. I mean, truly, this is the exact same thing. And I love how Pete Holmes puts it when he's talking about it's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. He's not literally, like, this is so clearly metaphor, as the Bible is, in my opinion. And he's saying that if you are attached to the things in your life, you're never going to be able to reach some sort of heightened state of nirvana, or whatever word you want to use, but some relation with something that's bigger outside of yourself. He jokes, if you're attached to buying a new bidet or something like that, right? Like, what are all the things that I'm so attached to here, which is why, I mean, Jesus mentioned it like how many times in the Bible where he's like, get rid of your possessions. Don't be attached to these things. There's no place here. And he even says, there's one guy that he's like, yeah, I'm ready to follow you, but first I have to go bury my father. And he says, let the bird bury the dead. Let the dead bury the dead. And what he's getting at there is like, all of these things that you think you need to do, including burying your own father. He's like,
Mm.
this is still missing the point. That's still a should. Like,
Mm.
the moment is now. Release all of these things that are required of you. I love this thing Sadhguru says. He's like, if Jesus were to come back right now And by the way, Sadhguru is not a Christian teacher at all, but sometimes he teaches using Jesus. He goes, if Jesus came back right now and you knew without a doubt that this was 100% Jesus, and he said, come follow me, he goes, how many people in this room would go, yeah, I would love to, but like I just took out a 25-year mortgage
Yeah, and I
and
just signed up with a new golf course,
right,
and
my kid's going to
kids going to
Princeton and
private
we paid for a
school.
semester and like so I kind of now's not great,
Right. Yeah.
and I'm not perfect about
Yeah,
it. I'm not
Jack Cornfield talks about like there's nobody that's less close to God than a middle-aged person with a mortgage.
There's nobody that's less close to God than a middle-aged person with a mortgage.
Right.
So
I think the point he's making there is about the timeline of your life. Like you're really attached to um a godly state when
wow.
you're born and when you're a baby and when you're young and
Yes.
you don't have like shame yet and you don't have
Yes.
shoulds yet and you don't have like you're a baby and you're still very connected to a godlike state.
Yes.
And then when you die, you're very connected to
Right.
okay, like looking at your life in its totality, and you sort of, as we get older, we let go of more and more and more, right? You
Yeah,
don't have the
yeah.
mortgage, you don't have the job, you retire, you kind of start to let go of all you start giving away your possessions, you set up a
Yes.
will, you understand who your belongings are going to go to when you die, and then you start to just like, you let go of less of more and more and you
Your
have less
mask,
and less.
like you can't
Your
hang on to that
mask
mask
starts
anymore.
to come off, but the person that middle-aged person with a mortgage is the least is going to have the
Oh.
hardest time
I,
connecting.
I I'm that's really hitting with me right now. Like I just have had moments with people in my life as we are getting older that I'm seeing more and more attachment towards those sorts of things, getting further entangled with more possessions and properties, and that's kind of like what is their driving waking up icky guy, right? Their reason for waking up and that isn't mine. And sometimes I feel like a fish out of water in that way, especially like
Sorry, can I just clarify what you said? You're seeing older people that are less obsessed with their objects.
no, I'm seeing because I'm 38 and I'm getting in towards more and more. I'm having some people in my life, to my eyes, seemingly be more attached
Oh, I see. Like your peer
to the
set.
accumulation
Yes.
in
Yes.
my peer
Yes.
set, and that has not really been my drive.
Right.
And so I am seeing that, and that's wild to me. And I totally agree with what you said about younger kids. Have you heard Richard Rohr tell that story of a mother came up to him during after one of his sermons and just had to share this story about there was a young son that was like 2 or 3 years old or something, and a young new like fairly newborn baby was in his crib, and they had the monitor on so they could hear, and the kid was like, I want to see baby Jack or whatever, and I want to talk to him alone. And they were like, okay. And they left the room, but they heard on the monitor, and he went up, he's like, quick, he goes, where did you come from? I'm starting to forget.
Yeah. I love that story.
Is it really true? Did an actual 3-year-old be like, I'm starting to forget where I came from? Who knows? But
Right.
kids can be that way sometimes, and like,
Well, they say that an infant's brain is almost the same brain. Like if you're studying like actual brain patterns and
yeah,
functions, like under an MRI or something,
yeah.
the same patterns are happening in a baby's brain that happen in a person on LSD
Oh
or on
wow,
intense psychedelics.
yeah.
And you can kind of see
You
that in
can
a
kind of
baby's
see it
eyes,
too. They're
like
a
oh, they're
little bit
high.
spacey, and you look
Yeah.
at one, and there's like, yeah, man.
Yeah, and then they go like super like to crying instantly and then super back to laughing really fast and you
Uh-huh.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so like you're coming from that psychedelic godlike
Yeah. And they're
state.
all playing Jimi Hendrix all the time.
And they're
Just
wearing
like,
tie-dye.
dude, man.
But
Cool.
like that's why like as middle-aged people we have to take LSD or you have to do a lot of sitting, a
Right.
lot of contemplative practices Richard says, and
Right.
sitting in quiet or the cheat code which is take psychedelics
Right.
to connect you back to that brain space where you are just floating in the universe, a part of it all,
Yeah.
sitting
Right.
in it.
Right. Right. I totally I totally agree. I love where this conversation has gone too. Um, and it even brings you back to the idea of like when I'm in that mind space too, time doesn't seem so I'm not wrestling with time in the way that I am where it's like, "Hey Brad, you have an hour before you need to be anywhere. Can you just sit?" But yet in that mind space, it's just like, yeah, like of course. Why would there's no pressure to go do anything. There's this great, it's just fun to say, El fin de la fan, which is the end of eagerness. And it's just kind of like all around Latin America, but it's just like, yeah, like the end of eagerness, the end of desire. Um, and I think what we're talking about in general is like, how can we still continue to move towards things that are good for us without desiring them in a way that puts us
Or without being attached to the desire, or
right,
without being attached to what the desire represents. If you're
right,
desirous of all of these things, whatever it might be, career stuff, promotion, money, house, car, whatever the things are that you're attached to, whatever n- the camel can't get through the eye of the needle because he's
yeah,
attached, right?
yeah,
Um, like whatever it is, like you have to like be willing to part with it,
mm,
and also remember your social security number,
yeah, yeah,
it's um yeah, it's that letting go of or at least recognizing um the relationship to that eagerness and desire.
tell me more about what you mean by that.
I think there's like part of healing, a large part of healing is recognizing when you're doing things.
Yeah,
Recognizing when your personality is taking over, when your ego is dictating decisions,
yeah,
when you're angry about something and you can't quite put your finger on why because it's not that big of a deal.
yeah,
Or how come we can like be angry about something and then 2 weeks later not that angry, even though the
right,
same thing, it's the
right,
same outcome that like of the thing that made us angry, but now we've like let it go a little bit.
totally.
And so when you can notice it, part of healing, I think, is noticing in those moments, or at least, shorter and shorter distances between them.
That's what I don't remember who said it, but they said growth is shortening the distance between self knowledge and self awareness. Self knowledge is I know that I can be this way sometimes, and self awareness is, yeah, you're doing that thing right now that you know about yourself, and 80% of the time you're like, I might be, but I don't fucking want to hear it right now.
Right. And
But it's
and
like, oh no,
and
that's
I'm
coming
doing
up
it.
again.
Okay, I'm doing it again.
I'm
Ah,
doing
there
it
I go.
again.
I'm doing it again.
There, you know what, Brad? You're unable to sit right now because you're desirous of this thing and you feel like this state or this emotion or I'll be happy when, and you aren't letting that take its due course.
Mhm.
You aren't letting things be as they are. And that's
Yes.
why I'm
And that's
uncomfortable.
okay too, and I see you, and that's okay too, and I still love you,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, I get I I buy things sometimes, and I was buying something the other day, like clothes,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Why am I doing this?" In the middle of buying it, I just was like, "I didn't need any of that stuff I just bought."
Ah,
So it's like, what feeling caused me to want to go shopping for these things that I didn't actually need?
yeah.
And then I was like able to see it and be like, okay, maybe I don't need these things, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, but so I guess I was thinking of the eagerness and the desirousness. Like something in me felt a certain thing, had a desire
Yeah.
for something else, decided to go buy something that I didn't need
Right.
to try to fill some hole that I thought buying this thing would fill. It obviously wasn't going to work, but like I could catch myself in the moment a little bit. And
Mm.
so I think that's kind of part of the game is like how far do you have to be from how close or far are you from the incident taking place to where you can recognize, "Oh, I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
I'm back on my bullshit."
Yeah. I'm back on my bullshit. We don't need to talk about it in this episode. And I haven't mentioned it once yet, but one of the best things that I ever did to set myself up for adulthood was taking a full year off of buying anything new. And it's called a compact year. And truly, if anyone wants to try it at home, you can do a little bit of research on doing a compact year. You set up some rules for yourself, and it just now I'm at the point where it's just been really helpful for creating some space, because you start realizing when you buy nothing new for a whole year, you're like, oh yeah, you don't need anything. Now build from there. And so that muscle works out, you know, works pretty strongly for me. Like, I think about it more than most, but you're totally right about, uh, and I think that what you just said also goes really hand in hand with like the idea of our capitalist nature, which is like both the problem and the solution is going to be more things and more money, right? And that's sort of, we can't fault ourselves for sometimes falling and forgetting that, because that's the rules that we were given like early on, advertises to children and all this kind of stuff, like, and we live in a society where this is the norm. So like, growing and continuing to examine, when is buying things and going after money and freedom like going to be helpful, and when is it like, wow, I'm kind of just doing this reflexively,
Right. And when I'm about to be 40, and a lot of my friends and my peer set are going through this, like, I don't even know if I like this job. Like, I got into it when I was 22, and then I
Yeah.
just kept getting better at it. And then I kept getting promoted and getting new jobs. And now I'm 40 and I've been doing this for 18 years. And now I don't even know if I like this.
Yeah.
I literally had a conversation with my friend about this a couple weeks ago. And she was like crying because she was like, I have been chasing after something that I don't even know if I want.
Yeah.
And it's like that Thomas Merton
Quote.
like I've been spending my time climbing this ladder only to have recognized it was leaning up against the wrong wall.
Yeah.
I'm sure I butchered that.
That was great. That was great.
But yeah, like, oh, I'm climbing this ladder. I'm climbing. Meanwhile, my ladder was up against the
wrong
wall.
And it's the only way to learn that lesson, because if you had never even started climbing that ladder, so let's give ourselves some grace.
That's
Because if
true.
you had never even started climbing that ladder, you might have lived a different life and been like, well, what if?
That's a really good point. Like, those are the lessons we have to learn, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of the whole jam.
It's part of the jam. This goes back to your thing of like, we haven't done anything wrong.
Right. You haven't done anything wrong.
What a great place to start from, of being like, I'm cloaked in grace as I do this.
In grace.
Both the fall and the rise from the fall are, and both there's the fall and the rise from the fall, and both of them are the grace of God. All of this is just like, hey, it's like, live and learn, just be aware and hold yourself with love and allow yourself to grow. But I would say all of those people that are having that wake up moment, it's like, great.
Now what?
Now what? Now
what?
There's this party that's happening that's like, what are all the things that did make you feel wonderful?
Yeah.
How many people can you talk to when we're talking about rest and relaxation? How many people can you talk to where you're like, when was the last time where you were like just totally fine outside of vacation, like burning a day? And it's going to be like a kid on a weekend, or
Right.
where you're just like,
or a little kid who's
we used to just like run around, and then we come inside and have lemonade, and then we play some games, and then we do this.
Right.
But like, I never once, when I was 11, would have that feeling of like, I'm not advancing. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You know what I mean?
I was watching my nephew, who's 2, play in the ocean last week, and he kept scooping the sand up and then going to dump it in the ocean like all day. Like, that was his job. Like, he's like, I gotta get all this sand into the ocean. And I was just cracking up thinking that this little kid.
Hey, Marcel, listen, I'm busy.
Can't you see my task at hand?
Right. I got Mr. Mitchell's riding my ass.
I gotta get this sand back in the ocean.
I gotta fill up the ocean by Tuesday, and no chit chat's gonna take care of this. What do you need? You're either making money or you're not, Lauren. Okay. Buy, sell. Where are we going? What can you do for me? I mean, but everyone,
but that's kind of probably like when you like, if you were looking back at your life and you're on your deathbed, you're like, it's almost like the things that we cared about so much that were so important are almost I could imagine them looking as silly as Marcel trying to put the sand into the ocean.
They look so silly. I feel like When you hear about people that have worked in hospice care or whatever, or that woman that wrote that book about the wishes of the dying, and they were like, "Well, how do you? What are your regrets of your dying?" And every time it was like, "I wish I worked less. I wish I spent more time invested in my relationships. I wish that I tried things that interested me. Maybe it was music or acting or whatever." We already spoke beautifully in an episode, I think last episode, about doing things for the sake of them and not to go and be, oh, you like dancing? Are you going to be the world's best ballroom tap dance? Like, no, I want to dance. Like, I want to play guitar for
Right.
fun,
Right.
not to go join a band, you know?
Right.
And, but like, these are all the things of when you talk to a kid, they're like, yeah, no fucking duh. You know, they're just like, yeah, like it can be simple. Things can be simple. And, you know, I'm not saying that kids, especially kids today, are able also to sit in a room because that seems to be really difficult for anyone's brain without a lot of practice.
Yeah.
But I do think that the priorities can be simplified.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that happens when you have big space. When you're out
Yes.
on vacation, when you're out whatever. How many times have people been out on trips and been like, "Yeah, I just like saw things from like a, a zoomed out perspective." And I was like, "Why am I so worried about this thing?
Yeah.
Why am I so focused on this thing?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because we've talked a lot about um like spirituality and like taking the garbage out, not taking the garbage out, sorry.
Taking all the
Taking the
furniture out.
furniture out of
Yeah.
the apartment and then putting it back in the way you want it.
Yep.
And um I think that that's happening with like again with my peer set at this uh from a career perspective too, because it's like, cool, cool, cool. We all climbed these ladders we didn't even know we wanted to like be on.
Yeah.
We all went down this path we didn't like happenstance. We didn't even know we were going to like go down. We just happened to end up on it. And now we're here. What do we do with it? And
Yeah.
so like, how do I put this furniture back in the way I want? How do I set up a lifestyle that works for me? Maybe it's less time at work. Maybe it's, you know, taking a pay cut and having a 4-day work week. And maybe it's like, right. It's like, it's what works for me now, and how now that I've come out to the other side in the same way of like spirituality, like what works for me now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also, this is, I say mark my words, but I think there's going to be kind of a little bit of a cultural upheaval with a lot of people. There's a lot of wealthy people in the previous generations that are like Warren Buffetting, where they're like working, maybe not as late as him. He's super old, but a lot of people like working the amount of time in their life that they should and retiring at 65, even though they have a ton of money. In our generation, with people that have done well, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, I'm 49 and retired. And people are going to start getting pissed
What
about
do you
it.
mean?
I think there's going to be a lot of people being like, yeah, oh yeah, my whole life has been like I just don't need to work anymore, and I'm not going to live like a crazy wealthy life, but I have enough money saved up that I don't need to work anymore. And there's going to be a lot of people
Oh,
that
like a pushback against
like a
that?
pushback against that, being like, oh my God, there's a lot of, because we're not, I don't think people are getting the kind of satisfaction from, I'm the kind of guy that runs the company like this. There's so many people that are in like either middle management or middle upper management that are just like, this isn't the best thing I know to do with my time. And when they get to a point where they crunch the numbers on it and they're like, oh, I can live without having to work or be work optional. I think there's
Right.
going to be,
Or work flexible.
work flexible, work optional, have seasons where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm kind of
Yes.
taking projects from time to time,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
9 to 5 for the next 20 years, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily going to be a bad thing. Like, I'm someone that has always kind of fought to have control over my time with me taking non-full-time work. I've done a lot of tutoring. I've done a lot of like video projects and things like that. But a lot of time there's free time, which is why I'm sitting here quoting books and like whatever. Like this, I have time to go and do things that interest me. Lots of frequent travel, but so I'm welcoming to it because I'm ready for the rest of the world to be like, what else really interests me? I mean, I think it was Eckhart Tolle that was like, there's going to be a lot of people that are kind of that have done well and are saying my ladder's been resting along the wrong wall. And maybe it's Ken Wilber, but he's like, there's going to be a lot more second half of life kind of instructional people, and we're starting to see
Or
some
like
of
even
that
new careers or
new careers of like, oh, spiritual practitioners,
right.
or you people will have to be very on the lookout for spiritual materialists that are kind of like playing
Yes.
this own weird game, but like the ones that are really have other people's best interests in mind, that are like, are you looking for something bigger and deeper? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that that's going to be just as I just as like important as a physical trainer, physical therapist, a therapist. I think that like, yeah, I'm extrapolating a lot here. We're kind of got off topic, but I feel passionate about this stuff
Mhm.
because there's you and I talking about this. And when we say that we don't want to talk about anything else, to remind people at home, that was originally one of the working titles of this podcast was I don't want to talk about anything else. You and I are kind of sitting here being like, this stuff's really cool and deep, and might be for some people the thing they're looking for after they're like, yeah, my career and the things I thought I wanted aren't
Yeah.
ringing true.
Yeah. Yeah. The things um yeah. I wonder like if there's a little bit of the to put it in the framework of spiral dynamics for a second that when there was the cultural revolution in the or not the cultural the sort of like the free love movement and the
Yeah, yeah,
peace
yeah,
movement in
definitely,
the
yeah,
60s like
yep, yep.
everyone people kind of did what was expected of them and what the culture expected of them and you like if you were a female you got married and you had children and you quit working and you took care of the home and if you were a male right there were like defined roles
Hmm.
there was a more definition around whatever then in the
It was really easy to
60s
wrap your head
it was
around,
easy to
like,
wrap your head around it was not complicated
yeah,
it wasn't necessarily like great
sure.
but it wasn't complicated. And then
Hmm.
in the 60s, then we talk about moving into more of the green sort of peace, love, um, inclusion, thinking of your fellow man,
Community over
community
personal
over
striving, yeah.
personal. Um, and I think as we're potentially moving into this like new-ish era, maybe, what like how do you take the we talked about this a couple weeks ago with like purpose, which is kind of a bullshit word because it got so wrapped up in capitalism. But could we
Mm,
reclaim the word and say, actually, what are the things I like to do? What are the things that I have experience in?
yeah,
Is there
yeah,
a way to re-put the furniture back in my house
yeah,
and not make it so much about like the predestined or the preordained thing I was supposed to do, whether that was the religion, the
yep.
community I grew up in, the job I was supposed to do. My parents really wanted me to be a doctor. My parents really wanted me to be a whatever, right? Like if we let some of that go and put it all back together in a way that made sense for us, like maybe that's the new, like that is what we're stepping into.
Yeah, I think that there's probably no one in Western society on this planet that hasn't been given some sort of expectation of what I was supposed to do. Whether they got it from an early loved one, or a parent, or a caregiver, or a teacher or something, but like something somewhere along the way, a professor in college, they were like, you're meant to do this, or whatever, but like some sort of path. And then, but there's it's so much easier to just go on that without deciding, is this really what I want to do? Um, I'm still doing a little bit of research on this right now, but I've really enjoyed reading a little bit about Heidegger. And Heidegger was talking about essentially like the things that we are supposed to do. And like we're kind of culturally given this thing of like, well, of course you go after, like you do things because this is what you're supposed to do. And to be like an integrated full human, it's sort of no, 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 I'm choosing my heroes, I'm choosing things that are important to me, and you can start to see in conversation, especially I would say around the age cohort that we're kind of in, are people who are like, oh, I haven't really thought about what I like to read, or who fascinates me. So when I'm sitting here and being like, yeah, I have someone that I would give a definite, like a define fluidly, a guru of someone like Richard Rohr, people are like, oh, I don't know if I have podcasts I like. And that's a
Yeah.
great start, and
Yeah.
things that interest me and
Sure.
stuff, of course. But like, I think that like to go and choose your own path, that also, when we're talking about purpose, that's the hero's journey in all of this. So
Right.
like pick like what gets you excited. And one other thing I want to say is I've heard so much within like therapeutic modalities of there is a lot of discussion around people being like, well, okay, if I didn't have to work anymore, like what, or just in general, what do I like to do? Like, what do I like to do? And do you know how many times those conversations, if they're properly led, are like, what did you do as a kid? What did you do as a kid before you started? And they're like, well, I like to play, I like to play basketball or something. And they're like, oh, cool. It doesn't have to be basketball, but what about that did you enjoy? And they're like,
Yes.
oh, I enjoy the movement, and
Yes.
like I kind of lost track of time, and it was a great workout for me,
Yeah.
or an instrument, or I
Yeah.
like to design. You know what I love to do? I love to draw and design these kinds of things. Well, if you can create some kind of freedom, if you're willing to live without a lot of attachment towards this culture of ascension and growth, and like we talked about, the mindset of collecting and accumulating things, then you have more freedom to do those
Yeah.
things that make you feel
Yeah.
like a kid. I think that's a good place to look.
Yeah. I think that's a great point.
Thanks for
My,
listening to my ramble.
thanks for listening to my TED Talk.
Yeah.
My Enneagram coach was asking me, because sometimes I go fantasy. I have like a fantasy
Yeah.
brain. And sometimes that's super, super helpful. Like at work, I can be like, oh, yes, okay, this piece connects to this, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be like this. And then I can get people on board with the idea, and then I can like get
You are good at that.
people excited about
Right.
it. But sometimes it's not great because it is probably a reaction to some trauma event from my childhood where I went into fantasy land in order to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I go into fantasy land, I'm starting to train myself to recognize, oh, what made you go there? What was it that made you, what led to that? Okay, what led to that? Okay, what led to that? And so she's helping me to sort of train myself in this. And I was recently, a friend of mine, a new friend who I met, was like, is a Pilates instructor. And she was like, you should become, I was like, I love Pilates so much. And she was like, you should become a Pilates instructor. And I was like, oh my God, I should. And then we can start a Pilates company, and then we can have an empire. And suddenly I have a Pilates empire.
You're boiling the ocean again. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so what, like that, going back to like, well, what is it about that? It's the movement. It's the disconnection from cell phones, and being in a room, and being here now, and moving together as one, and listening to people's breath and my own breath.
Yeah.
And doing something that's hard and makes me feel good and makes me feel strong.
Right.
So how can you do those things and harness those things so that you're not just jumping straight to, now I have this Pilates empire.
Right.
Which is probably an escape from something that's like potentially scaring me, or is hard.
For
or,
sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure. And I think my mind would also sometimes go there too, of being like, well, I'm going to do this thing that I want to do because I want to do it. And I'm also going to be fiscally comfortable and taken care of and all these things. So like my brain will just be like, and then you'll do this in such a way that you'll have plenty of resources. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. And yours is because like we've talked about, you have a self-preservation dominant instinct.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, resources, this can bring resources.
Yeah.
And therefore mine is more fantasy led. And so it's like, oh, I need to have this Pilates empire so that I have, like, people will think I'm strong or great, or I'll be popular, or I'll be loved, or whatever it might be. Like,
Right.
it's like I'm going into fantasy world to achieve something that I'm not feeling in the moment. Whereas you're like potentially doing that because you're like, oh, great, and then I'll have more resources. So just to like,
It's funny. I think you're
different
totally
sides of
right.
the same coin. You know?
I think that you're totally right. And I think that's where my brain absolutely goes. It's so funny to me when I do see someone like Warren Buffett, because he could not be wired more differently than me. Because I would have started like Warren Buffett, let's say, and because he's like 90 something years old and he's worth like $1 bajillion, and he wakes up and drives the same shitty ass truck every morning to go and like earn more money for shareholders. And I'm like, my guy, if I had just a tiny little bit of like enough money so that I could live not in a big way, I would just be like, goodbye forever. Like, bye shareholders. I'm closing Berkshire Hathaway. They're like, Berkshire Hathaway is worth $3 million. I'm like,
3 million?
no, like it's worth billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
But I would have been the guy that would have been like, no, I'm done now. It's 1973. They're like, you're just closing up, and be like, oh, I have enough money so I don't have to do this ever again. Not, I'm 97 years old. You know what I'm interested in? Uh, offshore water trust, like securities. Like, how is he still waking up doing this? Like, what is his?
Right.
But I think about that about the ultra rich all the time, where I'm like, oh my God, you guys are still gonna keep going.
Yeah. You're still not loved enough?
You're
You're
still.
still not good enough?
Wait, so let me get this straight. If you have $150 billion and you're about to do this other deal to get another 5, is your brain just so much on that wavelength of like, money made me happy, so more money makes
Me
more
more
happy.
happy.
But I'm like, you're
Oh, for
done. Like,
sure.
you're so done.
For sure. There's definitely a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, just like name a street after them somewhere and just be like,
Or just go sit.
you won
Go
capitalism.
sit.
Like,
You won.
yeah,
Go
you
sit.
won. Go sit. And they're like,
Just
no,
go away. More.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I am eager to. My peacemaker in me is like, if resources are sorted out, then I can
Oh, same.
experience.
I have
like-
that too. Oh, like I just need to get to this, and then I can enjoy my life. But again, that's like to the I'll be happy when. And I always talk about that with my husband. I'm like, it can't be I'll be happy when I'm on vacation, and it can't be I'll be happy when I'm retired.
right.
It has to be I'm happy now.
It
And if
has
it's
to
not-
be. It can't be.
Yeah.
It can't be. I was talking to my friend Nate about that exact same thing, and he was like, my dad retired and he died in 9 months. His heart stopped 9 months after he retired, and he retired young. He was like 50 something, and we've heard way too many stories of, there it was. I was 65 years old, and at 66 I got that diagnosis, and you're like, it can't be. It has to be now. So how can I make it now?
Yeah. How can I make it now?
How can I make
It's
it
really
now?
it's Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. It has to be now. It has to be this moment. It has to be
Right. How
that
can I
this is
relax
enough.
into it? How can I
How
surrender
can I relax and
into
allow
it?
and do my work, which is to relax and allow.
Relax and allow. Your
I
work.
should get that tattooed on my hand because how much I say that to myself.
Your work
now.
is to relax and allow. That's
Yeah.
Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
Your work in this life is to relax and allow no matter what. So we're kind of sinking into that right now, and we know full and well that there's another episode coming up that's going to be like, when is it great to push? Like, when is it
Yeah.
great to get uncomfortable?
Well, right. And that is going to be fun too. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what does it mean to move? And
And
what
it's
does it mean
both.
to invest your time into something? And like, why is that valuable
Yeah.
too? So that will be our next chat.
Yeah, I think that what we're kind of pointing at is that what we really want, you can use the word control, but I don't think that's what it is. I think that we want to recognize when each is best for us and then choose it.
Yes. It's choosing it. It's listening.
It's choosing, okay, it's relaxing time, and I'm choosing
Relaxing
it. Relaxing
time.
time. Well, actually, here's a great quote by John Lennon. You ready for it? Super simple, super laid back. Time you enjoy wasting was not wasted. That is John Lennon. Richard Rohr says, and I know I've said it on the podcast before, but he says, when I lose the thread of like all of the spirituality work, he goes, I need to return to holy goallessness. And I think that there is something that is holy about being goalless, and I can be fortunate when I'm on a trip for several weeks of being like, I have no goal on this trip. There's no checklist. There's nothing I need to go see. Each day I'm able to create the space to wake up and be like, what do I want to do? And that's blessed. Like, that really is an amazing place to be. But how can I, even when I am striving or when I have things that I want to do or move towards, how can I work joyously, right? That's Sadhguru. We always say we got to work hard. We got to study hard. Why can't we study joyously? Why can't we work joyfully, right?
Yeah. Totally.
And sometimes I don't have it always figured out, even sitting down with all the footage from this project and things like that. Sometimes it's like, Brad, this is a joyous thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And like this is clearly out of all this is a very funny conversation when someone like my dad is like, what would you do if you had money sorted out? He's like, you have to have a job. I had a conversation with my old roommates from college and they're like, you got to have a job no matter what. And I was like, hard disagree. Like a standard by the book paycheck W-2 job, I don't agree. And I know that because what would I fill my time with? I would fill my time with friends, with doing things that are interesting to me, things like comedy, amazingly fulfilling projects like this that are quote unquote work, but are also, you can see me right now in us with this conversation in real time. Like this is energy giving to me
Mm-hmm.
in a way where if we were in a boardroom talking about, well, we haven't moved enough units, like that is
Yeah.
energy training.
Yeah.
And so I would fill my thing with joyous, energy fulfilling pursuits
Yes.
that are both working joyously, but also
Yeah.
effort filled.
Yeah. But we're going to get to that next time.
Yeah. And so anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to say about
No,
relaxation?
I think we've gotten like, I think we talked about what I wanted to talk about, which is
Yeah.
about this relaxing and allowing moments to sit. Sometimes doing nothing is okay. The case for laziness, like
Burn a day.
lazy,
You taught me
burn a
about burn
day,
a
burn a
day.
day.
What's burn a day
Burn a
before you
day
go?
is just like we're calling in sick today.
You got a day, and oftentimes was it specifically in reference to like a loved one or someone close to you, and you're just like, hey, we're gonna burn a day.
No, but
Oh,
like
oh, got
just
it.
we're burning a day. I mean,
Yeah, got it.
yeah, Jen Adams taught me that. She always does piece of shit days.
Piece of shit days.
Yeah, where
Today's a
she'll
piece of
just
shit
call
day.
into work and be like, I'm sick today. And she's like, want to have a piece of shit day? And
Oh,
it's like, yeah,
let's burn a
yeah,
day.
let's burn a
I
day.
love that because it also is like, let's just take this time aside. Burn a day is helpful because you're not like, you want to burn. Well, I'm gonna have to do work by 5 o'clock.
Right.
But like, no.
Right, we're burning the whole day.
You got to burn the day.
Yeah.
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 One last thing, P. Holmes does say when he's going to have like a kind of a spiritual psychedelic trip, he goes, you got to set aside 3 days. You got to have the day before free, the day of free, and the day after free. And that is part of like the ceremony of it,
Yeah.
because you can't relaxation. Sometimes we're like, how do I cram this in?
It reminds me of this girl in my yoga class today was like texting all the way up until the yoga started, and then like answering text messages during yoga, and then as soon as the class ended was like back on her phone again, and I was like, you're missing the point.
Right. Yeah. If you're running late to yoga,
Right,
you're
you're
missing
missing
the
the point.
point. Yeah. Well, this
Okay,
has been beautiful.
good
to me.
chat.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.